I'm Alex Haugland.
And I'm Amy Haugland.
And this is our 1984 Volkswagen Golf GTI.
Welcome to another episode of Everyday Too Exotic.
Let's roll. There's over 200 cars in the Haugland Collection.
And it just keeps growing.
Our goal is to try and drive them all.
Each episode, we'll talk about the car's history, showcase its design and features, and dive into its mechanicals.
Then we'll take it out on a drive through the beautiful roads of Oregon.
Finally, we'll rate our car to see where it stands in the Haugland rank. On this episode of Everyday Too Exotic,
we discovered that the Golf wasn't Volkswagen's first water-cooled front-wheel drive car.
We talk about why it's called the Rabbit in the US.
You can't fit a set of golf clubs in the back. Amy discovers Farfignugan.
The driving experience is pretty awesome. All this and more on today's episode of Everyday Too Exotic.
But first, let's take a look into the Golf's history. Volkswagen had built its name following World War II by building variants of what was essentially a single platform, with an air-cooled, rear-mounted engine and rear-wheel drive, creating a reputation for affordable, simple cars, lacking in features, and to an extent, performance. By the 1970s, however, this formula was becoming stale, and the long-standing Volkswagen Beetle was clearly becoming severely dated and less attractive to buyers with access to more modern cars, leading to a drop in profits of 42% between 1969 and 1970.
In the late 1960s, Volkswagen took some of their earned capital to buy up other German car brands, including Audi, who Volkswagen intended to cease making cars and instead use the factory to make more Beetles, and NSU, which was suffering from cost and warranty issues largely stemming from their early rotary-engined cars like the NSU RO80.
Fortunately for Volkswagen, the engineers at Audi ignored the orders to cease car production and developed the Audi 100 in secret, providing Volkswagen with a newly developed, relatively advanced four-cylinder water-cooled engine. The new Audi 100 did enter production and helped keep Volkswagen alive as the sales of the rear-engine cars continued to falter.
Also helping to keep the company going and advance it technologically, Volkswagen introduced their first water-cooled front-wheel drive car, with that honor going to the entirely NSU-designed K70 rather than the Golf, and was sold badged as a Volkswagen.
Combining the expertise of NSU and Audi and hiring Giorgetto Giugiaro at Italdesign to come up with the overall body and styling, in 1970 Volkswagen began the development of Project EA337, the fruits of which turned into the Volkswagen Golf, which premiered in 1974.
The Golf was an immediate success, which proved to be a good thing for Volkswagen after they had invested 1.2 million Deutschmarks into the car. The name Golf was chosen as it was the German term for the Gulf Stream and became a standard naming convention for the company. In the United States, however, the connotations of golf as a sport didn't fit well with the young market Volkswagen was aiming for, which, along with the fact that you couldn't fit a set of golf clubs in the back, led to the choice of Rabbit for the US Mk1 release, favoring a quick, small, nimble animal as a reference.
You did it again, didn't you?
The Volkswagen Rabbit. You've got to drive it to believe it.
As time went on, the Golf continued to evolve, with the most significant early change being the introduction of the GTI, a more sporting, higher-performance variant of what was essentially still an economy car, giving Volkswagen a firm entry into the hot hatch market, launched by the likes of the American AMC Gremlin and the Italian Autobianchi A112 Abarth.
The first generation of GTI put out more than twice the power of the original 1.1-liter VW Golf at 110 horsepower, with that number continuing to climb as the engines were enlarged and improved. By the end of 1984, the Mk1 generation of the Volkswagen Golf came to an end, being replaced by a Mark II variant, carrying on the tradition through various marks until the present day.
Our VW Golf GTI is not a stock car and has been modified, most notably with a 2-liter engine from a later Golf Mark II, along with numerous performance and handling modifications and interior customizations. Okay, this is probably the first video where we started out with a title that is absolutely a lie. This is actually our 1984 Volkswagen Rabbit diesel. That said, it's not diesel anymore. It's not even really a Rabbit anymore in kind of the same sense as what these originally were. So there's a background to this car. The first car I bought for myself was a 1990 Volkswagen Jetta GLI with a 2-liter 16-valve engine. I destroyed that car. I totaled it. I parked it literally on the driver's side doors. I still had a car with a great engine, but no good body to it. I had a friend who had a 78 VW Rabbit that I bought from him with the intention of taking that engine and drivetrain, bits of the interior, and a bunch of things out of my wrecked car, putting it in, and turning it into a high-performance, very much 1990s era style monster VW Rabbit.
Well, that's no ordinary rabbit. That's the most foul, cruel, and bad-tempered rodent you ever set eyes on.
That ended up getting started and never got finished. So I was looking at it, figuring out this is a massive project, it's going to take forever to get done. What ended up happening here, however, was this car came up for sale, and I looked at it, and I'm like, this is exactly what I wanted to build in almost every way. This car has a 2.1 liter bored and stroked 16-valve engine, very much the same type of engine that I was going to put in this. It has European headlights, European bumpers. It's black, which is a good color on this. I was originally going to paint mine purple, to be honest, but that I could live without. This has an updated interior. The seats aren't original to the car. They've been trimmed differently. The dash is out of a later car as well. It has the golf ball shift knob. It has coilover suspension. It has a nice exhaust system. It has wider lower wheels. It's just really exactly the type of thing I wanted to build. And the advantage is I didn't have to do it. Buying this turned out to be a savings probably of tens of thousands of dollars compared to what it would have taken to build a car like this the way I wanted it.
Especially the state that the original project car is in at this point.
Definitely a better option to have bought this. That said, let's get into what makes this car cool and why I always wanted one.
So in many ways, this is Alex's car, in the same way that the Fiat Panda is my car. Coincidentally, they are designed by the same person, Giorgetto Giugiaro. You can definitely see a resemblance in the lines, the boxy shape, the very sporty stance, just general overall design.
In a lot of ways, this really dictated the shape of cars coming into the 80s. And it really kicked off the entire idea of sort of the hot hatch more than almost anything else. So overall, the shape of this, I think everyone pretty much recognizes the VW Golf. Volkswagen at the time was naming a lot of their cars after winds and like trade currents and things like that. So you have the Volkswagen Golf, named after the German term for the Gulf Stream. Coming to the United States, however, Golf didn't really have the right association. And on top of that, as much room as there is in these cars, you can't fit a set of golf clubs in the back. So calling it a Golf didn't really make sense. Here, we ended up getting the VW Rabbit. This, to me, is the purest form of these cars. There are other cool Golfs that were done later. There are other really nice variants. There's other engine options and things that were pretty cool that they did. But in its general shape, the original Giugiaro design, to me, really stands out as just a masterpiece in styling. You've got a lot of flat surfaces. You have a lot of panels that are fairly easy to make, which again, you're mass producing these things. At the same time, you have a lot of really subtle lines. It's like you've got this hard line here that runs down the side of the body that then curves up into the windows. Slightly above it, you have another slight crease along here that just gives you a nice little reflective line on the body, which really stands out on a black car like this. You've got the little pressings inside the hood that give you kind of that same type of shape. It's a really clean, aesthetic, folded paper style of design. These creases carry up also here on the A-pillar and onto the roof line. Just some subtle bends and subtle shapes, while still keeping it kind of a boxy, fairly easy to make car.
But it keeps it from being too flat.
Yeah.
It adds a little bit of variation so that the light can hit it in a more aesthetically pleasing way.
It makes it not boring.
Exactly.
And at the same time, we've got the slightly raised area down here, right above the silver stripes on this. Things like that really just sort of add to the aesthetics of the car.
Speaking of that silver stripe, one of the things that I actually love about this car is how little chrome there is. It's almost all black. And normally, you know me, I'm a chrome gal. I'm all about the shiny, but somehow there are bits that just provide texture rather than contrast. And somehow it makes the car just look cooler.
It's almost like you're driving a black and white photograph.
Yes.
To be honest.
Yes.
It just has that sort of depth to it.
So there are a lot of things on this car that on a lot of earlier cars would have been chrome. These things include the mirror. I love how boxy that is. It just fits in with everything else. It would look weird with a round mirror.
Yeah.
The framing on the windows, all black instead of chrome. The door handles, black. Also this trim piece on a lot of cars would be chrome, but it's black, and I think it looks better that way. And then you have your gas cap, which is also black, and one of the things I love about it is it looks kind of like a gear or a flower. It just makes me happy that it's not just round. You've got your little lock there. People aren't siphoning your gas. It's very important in the 80s.
The paint on this is pretty decent for the most part, and Bobby did a freaking amazing job detailing this car. So it shines, it glows, it has so much depth to it, but that just sort of adds to that experience of what makes a black car really kind of cool. It also is what makes black cars terrible to own, because to keep it looking like this, you basically need someone who can polish it and take care of it, and the slightest touch can scratch it. So other things that you'll really notice on this, the car's definitely been lowered. The tires sit really tight into the wheel wells, and the tires are wider than normal. The wheels, the Ronald Turbos, were a very popular aftermarket wheel, especially in sort of the era of the 90s when I was aiming at building a car like this. So with the wider wheels on here, the fenders have also been flared. But over the top of it are these fender flares, these plastic ones. These were actually an option on the European GTIs as well. So it's definitely something that kind of helps cover up the modifications that were made to clear the tires. So here we have the European bumper, essentially the same as what would have been on a European market car. On the US car, we always had those big impact 5-mile-an-hour bumpers that were terrible. So this has been updated to more of the European style. Looks much cleaner, much neater, much lighter. Probably not technically as safe, but those 5-mile-an-hour bumpers weren't that great either. We also have the European grille, which has our 7-inch headlights set in. These have H4 bulbs in them, so nice, bright, replaceable bulb headlights as opposed to sealed beams. And then smaller 5.25-inch lights, essentially, to be your high beam driving lights.
Things to notice aesthetically up here are that even though this is a European bumper, it is black. It's black plastic. It's not, aluminum or chrome metal. There's very few shiny bits up here. However, one of the really cool things about this car, and something you're going to see throughout, is this red line. I love that as an accent against the black.
And that was standard on the GTI grills. And it looks especially good on a black car. Another thing you'll see down here is we have an air dam, just trying to get as much control of airflow under the car and over the car and things like that. So moving back over the hood, we have our inlets here, which allows air into the cabin, into the rain tray, and there's a little plastic shield that we'll get to later inside there. The thing to note on the wipers, other than the fact that, again, they're black, not chrome, is we have this nice shield here on this. And the intention of that, if you haven't seen it before, because Amy hadn't before this car, is as you're going down the road with your wipers running at full speed, driving at high speed, you don't want the wipers to start lifting on the windscreen. So what this does is that it allows airflow to push on that wiper blade as it works on the windscreen in order to keep it tight to the glass as you go down the road. So being a US market car and a later car, the windscreen is bonded in. Earlier ones had a rubber seal with an insert strip to hold it in place. That frequently was chrome. This just has a nice little very clean black plastic filler essentially around the bonded glass. So then slipping around to the back of the car, something that is standard on the VW GTIs, but isn't that obvious on this black car, is the difference in paint between the main body of the car and the area right here around the window. So it was standard on the GTIs that this area was always painted matte black. On a black car, it's harder to tell that it's matte. On a white car, it stands out quite a bit. Rear window is heated. We've got heating elements through the top part of it, not through the bottom part, but a nice feature that we do have is a rear wiper. That wasn't standard on all of the Volkswagen Golfs of this era.
So again, on the back, not a lot of shiny bits. We do have a little bit, Golf GTI.
European logo, of course.
Volkswagen. And then this is my favorite part. On the license plate frame, there's a rabbit.
which is the rabbit that was on the back of the rabbit badge on earlier American market Golfs.
I really love that callback.
And again, European style bumper,
Black.
black. And because we have a higher performance engine in here, that is not a standard tailpipe. Obviously. You could fit tennis balls in there.
Good. I would not advise it.
Yes.
Just to be clear, don't try that at home.
So something else on here that isn't correct for a 1984 diesel Volkswagen Rabbit are the taillights. These are the European spec taillights, which the big part of that is so that they'd have a wide enough space to put a European plate. When they started producing the cars in the United States as opposed to only in Germany, they started with a much wider American style taillight. Opening the back is pretty easy. Push the button, lift. The trunk is actually pretty decent and nice and deep. With the back seat up and in place, you could easily fit, probably 6 boxes of wine back there. That's actually not bad for a small hatchback.
No. Imagine the amount of beer you could fit back here.
Yeah. If you need a little bit more cargo room, the back seat does actually fold down. You can basically unhook this, and then there are catches on either side, here and here, that allow you to release the seat and tip it forward. And thus you could get even more stuff in the back of this at the sacrifice of, like, not carrying small children. I'd rather have more wine. Okay, and with that, I think we're done in the back. Time to move on to the more interesting bits of mechanicals and interior. Okay, we're gonna get under the hood of this no longer diesel VW Rabbit. So, Amy, if you want to pop the bonnet, lift, there's a safety catch, we find it, there we go, and then prop rod comes up and holds it up. Immediately, if you know what you're looking at, you can easily tell that this is not the right engine in this car. Originally, the GTI version of this was an 8-valve engine. This has 16, so you've got 4 valves per cylinder, 2 intake, 2 exhaust, as opposed to 1 intake, 1 exhaust per cylinder. That allows you to have better sort of valve open times and better flows into the engine and out of the engine for the exhaust gases and for the intake charge. We have a fair amount of bracing and things that have been added to this car. We've got a Eurosport brace here. There's another one down below that helps reinforce suspension. Helps keep the car stable, handling very nicely. So the 16-valve engine originally appeared in the VW Scirocco 16-valve. The person who built this car originally put in a 1.8-liter 16-valve engine, and then later on upgraded the 2.1-liter built motor that's in here now. So the original engine, as well as the original 16 valves, used variants of the Bosch CIS injection system, which was a mechanical system that had a box with a flapper in it that basically controlled the amount of fuel that would flow into the engine based off of the airflow demand, essentially, of the engine itself. As the air would be sucked in, it would move that flapper and change the amount of fuel that would get injected in the engine. The downside of that system is it's a pain to tune, it's a pain to fix. There's a lot of things that become a problem when you start trying to do high performance. So on this, instead of that, it has tucked back in the rain tray, back here, a Haltech ECU with a modern electronic ignition system and modern electronic fuel injection. To that end, we've got a fuel rail with a fuel pressure regulator built into it. And so this actually has a European spec throttle body on it, which allows it to have a larger bore and actually fits on that earlier intake arrangement. The intake would have come into the box here. The box down here coming to your air box is where that flapper assembly would have been for the CIS. It's gutted on this. You still have an air filter in there, but you don't have all of the fuel injection. We still have a distributor tucked under here, but you'll notice none of the spark plug wires are attached to the distributor at all. They all come off of independently controlled coils over here that are controlled entirely by that Haltech computer. So all of the spark and everything is there. What this is still here for, though, is that it has what is measuring the timing and the rotation of the engine, and that data is then fed to the Haltech computer in order to know when to fire the plugs. So rather than losing spark energy essentially for that distributor arcing between the rotor and the cap, you basically lose all of that loss You gain all of that extra spark, I should say, by basically firing the coils directly from the computer itself straight to the plugs. Other things that you'll see in here is we've got our alternator here. Down below, we have an air conditioning compressor. Right now, that is purely decorative. So it does not do anything. This car does not currently have air conditioning. I do want to put it in. I haven't gotten around to it yet. It's a little bit more involved than just like hooking things up. As part of that setup, however, there's an oil cooler on this that's sitting in front of the radiator. That is also where the evaporator for the air conditioning would be sitting normally. So if I do end up doing this conversion and putting AC in this car, that's going to have to move. One thing that I find a little bit weird, but as best I can tell is sort of correct, is this top hose makes a 180-degree bend before it goes in the engine. It's a molded piece, and it does fit and it does do what it's supposed to do. It seems sort of odd to me that they would have done that, but it does flow, it does connect, and does everything that it should. We mentioned the rain tray here. You've got this little plastic shield in here that helps keep water directed to the sides when it comes in the vent at the top. And there are drains coming out of there. The reason that's there is directly underneath it is where the HVAC unit is with its fan and everything intaking air. So if the water was allowed to come straight through without that rain tray, it'll go straight into your HVAC system and straight into the interior of the car. This cheap molded plastic thing is all that's saving you. We've got a giant fuel filter here in the corner. I mean, this is a high performance car, you're pumping a lot of fuel through. It makes sense to have. So it's a transverse mount engine, cylinders running this way. Your transmission kind of sticks off this end, and it's connected to a 5-speed manual gear shift via, in this case, a set of linkage rods that essentially come from the shift lever all the way through and connect up to the transmission itself. Later on, Volkswagen went to a cable operated system. Linkage rods work fine, but they're probably more of a pain to adapt to various different cars. So I can see why they made that change. That said, I think that largely covers the mechanicals of what's here under the hood. That said, I think I can close up the bonnet now, the hood, whichever you want to call it. I don't know what it is in German. So I will pass it on to Amy in the interior.
So here we are in the very, very dark, very, very custom interior. This is definitely not the original VW Golf interior. For example, these seats are out of a BMW E30 3 Series and have been completely reupholstered to match everything else in here. They have all the controls that those seats would have had. They're very comfortable. I love the red and black interior. This is kind of a very short pile velour with this really nice red contrast stitching, which of course pulls in that red line we talked about, which you also see on the floor mats. Some of the fun features about the dash, for instance, this dash is out of a later model VW Cabriolet, but it does have that red line, which is very important in this interior. So over here, we have our lovely plastic glove box. It opens up like that. See? There's a little remote in there, probably for the CD changer. Also over here, we have the aforementioned CD changer. Very modern. We have our highly decorative controls for heating and cooling. These do nothing. As far as we can tell, they're not hooked up to anything. Not even the fans work. We will fix that. It's very important to have air conditioning in a dark colored interior. Otherwise you boil, and boiling is not fun. We also have our highly decorative vents. Eventually those two will blow air. They don't do that yet. Down here we have our very handy shift pattern, our cigarette lighter, because of course we do, and our ashtray, because again, of course we do. We have gauges down here. This one tells us about our oil temperature. This one tells us about our battery voltage. And this one tells us about our oil pressure. Also down here, we have our golf ball shift knob. This is an actual VW part. It was not original to this car, but if you have a Golf, you gotta have a Golf shift knob. It's just a thing. So moving back up, we have these very cool rocker switches that are labeled. You know, you've got your hazards and your heater and your lights and your dome light and stuff. You've got lights that light up when you don't have your seatbelt on or you have your handbrake on, because this is the 80s and you need to have your seatbelt on. Here we have the tachometer, and then integrated into the tachometer, we have the fuel gauge. Unlike the Karmann Kia, which had a clock instead of the tachometer, which was not very useful. This is much more useful. Also over here we have our speedometer. So it has miles per hour in big numbers around the outside, and then kilometers per hour in little numbers around the inside. I don't have to do math no matter where I'm driving this car. I want to go to Canada? No problem. You have little lights that indicate that, hey, your lights are on, you should maybe check your oil, your battery's doing stuff, and your turn signals are on. Those are very good lights to have. I don't know, it's really, really kind of 80s, 90s, just those tiny little lights. I just think that's really cool. Steering wheel is very cool. I like the leather cover on that. And you have your usual, you have your wipers and your turn signals and things like that. The horn is inset, which is different, but it is in the right place. There it goes. It's a little iffy. There we go. What you can't see from this angle is in the middle of the inset horn, there is a wolf and a castle, which is the symbol of Wolfsburg, which is where the Volkswagen factory is. And if you watch the Karmann Gia episode, that's also in the middle of the steering wheel on the Karmann Gia. Volkswagen was very proud of their factory and where it was. So this car does have a back seat. It's upholstered the same as the rest of the car. Not a lot of legroom back there. So you're probably, again, better off putting more boxes of wine or other delicate things that don't have legs to get squished. Well, I've been sitting here long enough without going anywhere. Let's get the show on the road! It is a beautiful day for a drive. We are getting some really nice weather out here. And the driving experience is pretty awesome. Once it's going, it's actually very nice, very easy to drive, very fun. The shifter is difficult. Alex mentioned to me earlier that it's because it's not a direct linkage like some other cars. Therefore, it is difficult. Also, the gears are kind of close together, so it's a little easy for me to get into fifth when I'm trying to go into third, or third when I'm trying to go into first, which makes it more annoying. But other than that, steering is very precise. The car doesn't mind if I rev. It takes a little getting used to not kill it first. But that's what happens when you're driving a car you've not driven before. You get used to its little ways. But it doesn't take long. It doesn't take long at all. It's not as forgiving as some of the other ones. I'm like, should I downshift? Not at this point, but it likes me to keep the RPMs up.
The gearbox is a pretty close ratio gearbox. So for the most part, you go through the gears pretty quickly.
Yeah. The seats are comfy, visibility's good, curves, no problem, straights, it's happy. It accelerates well. Again, it doesn't mind if I rev, which makes me really happy. It has enough power without being too much. I feel very safe in it. But at the same time, on these windy roads, I don't feel like I have to slow down a lot. I mean, I'm going more slowly than I would be on a straight. But for other cars that we've driven on this channel, you have driven them more spiritedly than I have, partially because you are more experienced with that car and that type of car. And you know how it likes to be driven. And you also know the roads better than I do.
Yes. Well, I've been driving a lot longer than you. in general, independent of classic cars and things, or any particular car. And that makes a big difference, I think.
Oh, it really does. Because there is the getting used to an individual car, but there's also the bone-deep understanding of how a car operates, what you can ask of it and what you shouldn't.
I mean, this was a car for everyone, so it really had to be built in such a way that pretty much everyone could fit in it and drive it for the most part.
From teens who hadn't necessarily hit that growth spurt to tall people.
Yeah. I mean, in the United States, the VW Rabbit was a great first car for people. It was pretty reliable, pretty economical, drove well, handled well, was practical, kind of covered all the bases of what you're looking for. It's part of why it became such a popular car.
What can I tell you about this car? I kind of don't want to get out of it. It's very enjoyable, despite my shifting issues. But I think that if I was driving this a lot, that would not be a problem.
Yeah.
This is the start of something.
I loved my VW Jetta when I got it. I loved the engine note, I loved the way that it drove. I loved it until I completely destroyed the thing. So it's nice to have kind of sort of finally gotten what I was looking at coming out of that entire project. And although it's not the same car, it's very much in the same vein of exactly what I was trying to do. But this isn't the fastest car in the collection, but it's actually got great performance. It accelerates really well. The engine has a good amount of power as far as pulling the car forward and everything. Suspension is good, a bit stiff. The coilovers actually keep the car pretty stable, but at the same time, you hit a bump, you feel that you hit a bump. It's not as cushy as some of our cars, but it feels like a car that I'd love to take out in autocross. It loves sweeping curves, it loves windy roads, just carry your speed through, it feels pretty good. If I have one complaint, it's sort of the position the gear stick is pretty far forward. So the position where I'm comfortable sitting, I have to reach a ways to actually reach. I'm fully extending my arm. I'd love it if we're back about 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches.
I would honestly find that more comfortable.
I think you
would. I felt like I
too.
was reaching pretty far forward.
Well, you have short arms to go with your short legs. So.
I do. All of me is short.
Yeah. AC would be nice in this car in the height of summer because it's a black car with a black interior, and right now not even a fan. So roll down the windows like we have right now and enjoy the fact that it's a nice, cool spring day.
We will have all that we wanted. We will be touching the sky. History can no longer haunt us.
So it's a very nice aerodynamic brick.
Yes, yes. It is.
Not as much as like a Jeep or something, but
Yep.
I mean, it's kind of that rectangular, sort of blocky car that Giugiaro defined the style of cars coming into the 80s. It's what everyone started copying moving forward from here.
The kind of boxiness of this car is part of what makes it feel fun and youthful. I feel like it's just got that image attached, much like the Panda.
I mean, the Panda very much is in the same mentality as this car. The Fiat Panda is a four-wheel drive, smaller engine, doesn't have the power of this, doesn't have the handling of this, but as a car, it has a lot of the things that make this car great are the things that make the Panda great, and vice versa. There's later four-wheel drive versions of the Golf. I've never driven one, and I think it would be fun to do so, but I love this original Mark I version of the Golf more than any of the others that I've seen. This really is sort of the purest form of that sporty economy car that makes the hot hatch.
It's the start of something. It's the start of something. It's the start of something new.
All right, now we're back in the studio after that absolutely stunning drive, and it's time for the Haugland Score.
Here's how it works.
Alex and I have individually rated the car in 5 categories, each with a rank of 0 to 10. Then we add our scores together to give us the final Haugland Score.
After we combine our scores, the results go up on the board.
So for performance, I gave it an 8. Once I got used to the shifter a little bit and really started driving it, the performance is wonderful. It steers really well, excellent handling, good brakes, good acceleration.
I gave it a 7.5. And the reason why, in a lot of ways, is it is a fantastic car to drive. But when you're comparing it across some of the other cars that we've driven on here that I've given 8s and 9s to, it's like, it's a great performing car. It drives nicely. It's a fun car to drive. It doesn't have the raw, pure power of some of the absolutely pure sports cars. So moving on to styling, I gave the car a 6, which is probably going to be a bit controversial for a lot of people. The styling is great for what it is, but at the same time, it's another one where it's really hard to compare and say, okay, how does the styling compare to the Lancia Aurelia?
It's very true.
It makes it very, very difficult.
And I gave it a 7.
Okay.
So I gave the Panda about a 6. I gave it a 7 because the custom interior, I feel, bumps up the style a little bit with that extra coordination and the red lines that match the stuff that's on the outside and all that. But generally, it's not, as you pointed out, it's no Aurelia. So for drivability, I gave it an 8.5. And a lot of that is the shifter. It's just difficult to get it into second sometimes. It's kind of a pain in the butt. But generally speaking, I would take this grocery shopping, I would park it anywhere, I would take it on long drives. It's up for anything.
I also gave it an 8.5, entertainingly. And for me, it's not the shifter. I can get used to the shifter very quickly. I have less of a problem with that. My biggest issue with this car, and it's entirely fixable, this could easily be a 10, is I need to get the HVAC system working correctly. I need to have heat, I need to have air conditioning. I mean, really, honestly, without the HVAC system being rebuilt and functioning as it should with heating and air conditioning, there's no way I would want to drive this at the hottest part of the summer or at the coldest part of the winter. So next is significance, and I gave it a 7, and that's kind of debatable. 7's, okay, I'm gonna give it a 7.5.
There you go.
And the reason I'm gonna give it a 7.5 is because it really launched Volkswagen seriously into building water-cooled front-engine cars. This wasn't the first in many ways. It wasn't the first hot hatch. It wasn't the first water-cooled car that Volkswagen sold. It really is what kicked off that move in Volkswagen to completely redefine themselves away from being just rear-engine air-cooled cars.
I can see that. And I gave it an 8. I gave this car an 8 because it really established the aesthetic of the 1980s hot hatch. It wasn't the first hot hatch, but it influenced what hot hatches looked like from then on for a long time. Also, it is one of those cars that holds a lot of significance for people in general. For a lot of people, this was their first car. For a lot of people, this was a car that at least was common around them. And so I think it holds a significant place in a lot of gearheads' hearts. So for delight, I gave it an 8. It's really fun to drive. It's really fun to ride in. A lot of people love the Golf. I mean, it has a following.
Absolutely. I also gave it an 8. And a lot of that has to do with things like, for example, before this, when we went to the gas station, from across the parking lot as we're putting gas in, waiting for the camera van to show up and everything to catch up with us, this person goes by and yells, "Beautiful GTI!" And then just the reactions we get absolutely everywhere on this car. Cars that have a connection to people usually inspire far more delight than those that are more obscure and, for the majority of people, more vaguely interesting than something that they have that personal tie to. Almost everyone has some kind of tie to a Volkswagen Rabbit or a Volkswagen Golf or a GTI.
And most of the memories surrounding these kinds of cars are really happy ones.
Quite often. We've now done the math and come up with a grand total of 77 points. That puts it in 6th place and 1 point shy of our Lotus Evora S and only a half point ahead of our Datsun 240Z.
I feel like that's a really good spot for it. I find it really entertaining that it's only 1 point down from the Evora because they're two very different cars.
Absolutely. But at the same time, it's It's almost on par with the 240Z in my head. In a lot of ways, they are both great cars in much the same way. I think that this has a few advantages as far as practicality that the 240Z doesn't have. But aside from that, I can see those two being very comparable in scores. That makes a lot of sense to me.
It works for me too.
So, wow, that is kind of an interesting result. I mean, it makes sense. It fits where it's at. I think that it's a great opportunity to showcase really what is another great iconic car.
It also really showcases the variety of cars in the collection.
Absolutely.
Because, again, we're kind of comparing apples and oranges in some ways. But in other ways, it's like, no, that fits.
As usual, we're judging this based on our car, our example. So feel free to completely disagree with us. We enjoy it if you comment, say that we're completely full of whatever you want to say, as long as you keep it generally PC and not overly impolite.
Be nice to your fellow people in the comments. This is a family-friendly channel.
Otherwise, please like, subscribe, continue to follow us as we come out with some absolutely amazing cars. We've got something that I've been wanting to do for ages on this channel next. It's a car that if I really could go back and do it all over again, we probably would have started with. So definitely subscribe, hit the notification bell to find out as soon as it's out there. Okay, I think that's it.
I think so too.
So then we're going to close out in homage to the Volkswagen Golf with a golf clap. Bye. Let's roll. Okay, that's as much as we can roll because I'm sitting on my keys.